All right, welcome back to the You Can't Fool You podcast, where old school values have a modern edge. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Vertigo Center, helping you find balance when the world won't stop spinning. So if you or a loved one suffering with balance, dizziness, or vertigo, please contact thevertigocenter.com today to take your first steps towards steady living. Chris, thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so, you spent your time in music education and then you went into math education and software. What's what connects all of them for you?
Well, many threads, I will tell you, but probably the discipline to learn each of those languages is the foundation of each one of those. You can talk about the math music connection, and people will do that. They'll say, note values are fractions. They'll say that the harmonic series, from a science standpoint, that there's math and science and music and stuff. And especially in the last couple of years, as I've been doing what I've been doing, I see them a little more abstractly, as in once you understand and decide to prioritize learning the language of math, then I can think mathematically and abstractly. Whenever I learn the language of music, whether it's the fingerings or the scales, or I'm able to sight read a piece of music, then I can express musically. Whenever I can develop in a software language, I can develop anything I can imagine. And so those might be the common threads that people don't always point out. They definitely point out sort of the low hanging fruit of some of those more common commonalities. But the fluency aspect is really something that I've focused in on. And I believe, and I can't prove it, although I began proving it in 1990, 91, that the fluency that I developed in mathematics at a very young age helped me more quickly develop fluency in the others. I wired my brain so that I knew addition and multiplication automatically before I was in kindergarten. And so I was able to do the abstract thinking and math education as it came along quickly. And I believe those, whatever neural pathways were there, I think led to quicker fluency in music, to be honest. So that's uh
What is
that's what I have.
what it sounds like that I'm hearing is that just another way of saying master the basics first?
It is another way of saying master the basics first, or you can do anything you set your mind to. Also,
Yeah.
I find joy in solving math problems. I find joy in music. I found joy in soccer and cycling, and I did those. I didn't find the joy enough to prioritize my upper body strength. That's one of the things that if I did set my mind to it, I believe I could achieve that. I have in those others, but that's part of it as well.
Yeah. I think that is a common thread to really anything is getting the basics down first before moving on to any more complex problems, movements, chords, notes. Do you think why why does it seem so hard to master the basics? Like people just it does seem like people want to skip steps and sort of like in the process you can't really skip steps.
Exactly. That's something that in 23 years ago I wrote in How to Make First Chair. It wasn't that there was a shortcut. It was, here's the work ethic. And by the way, you need to be patient because it's not going to happen in one session. In fact, that book, and it's talking about doing your best at auditions or performances musically, it says you need 3 months to do just this one performance or audition. And the first month, you need to be real patient. And then the second month, you're over learning and becoming real fluent. And that third month, you're doing something. And so I think patience uh, is the biggest key on that. And the things that I've found joy in, I found more patience for, coincidentally. But that is the work ethic. Are
Hmm.
you are you disciplined enough to do that part of it? There's no shortcut, and I wrote about that back then. And that's kind of what I'm writing about now in another discipline with math. There's no shortcut. You have to learn and be patient and let yourself learn this over time. Um, I've recently thought about how I was raised and my math teachers versus now. Before, Texas had what's called the TEKS, and it's TEKS. It looks like Tex. It's TEKS. They outlined these are all the essential skills, and it's a huge long list. And multiplication fluency is on that around third grade, but because of there's this long list, I don't know that it's covered all day, every day, or I should say a little bit every day, all year, like it should be. I think it's sometimes given a little slot and then passed over. But I think it's one of those things that you need to do daily as part of
Hmm.
the culture of the school or anything else. Bands do that. They don't just start jumping into hard music. They start with warm ups every day and the basics every day. They're doing scales every day that
Hmm.
relate to the music. So that when it comes sight reading time in the spring, when you have this contest, and there's ensemble sight reading and there's individual sight reading, but that tests your fluency. You can't
Sure.
hide that. And I think that other disciplines can take lesson from that, especially math, where practice fluency every day and then perform it. And that's some of the things that I've built to help along with that sort of philosophy.
Yeah. Well, you're in Texas. I'm right outside of Philadelphia. Now, football is pretty big here, but it's definitely not as big as it is probably where you are. Now, football practice is sort of the same way. Is you kind of practice the same things. You show up to practice, you have your warm up, and then you go to like usually individual drills where you're practicing, your craft, and then you go and all right, this day you're practicing, these plays, right? And you're just breaking it down. You're practicing it over and over and over again, and then once you get your like core plays down, and you like, we want to run these 5 plays like really well. We should be able to run them in any situation, anytime against anybody. Then you start to go off that, and like that's what football practice is. And football practice can be like football practice is hard, and football practice can be like really boring because especially on offense because all you do is just run plays. It's not, and it can be boring, but like you see them when you get into the game, you got the basics down, you know what to do. It becomes you become fluent, you become automatic.
You know, a light bulb went off when you said that because I think about some of those interviews that I've seen on TV with John Gruden or folks that say these plays, and it is another language, right?
It is,
I
yeah.
mean, I don't even want to start because it's such a completely different language. You can't just say that to someone and then go out and execute. You develop fluency in that particular language of calling those plays so that you can go out and then not get caught up in that and go really execute the play on a high level. I think there actually are some great parallels, and I've not thought about that, but um, that is its own language. And once you master that, you can go out there and really do some of the subtle, advanced things that are required out there. That's a great
Yeah.
parallel
I
analysis.
mean, I mean, there is really a language to it. Like, once you get to call them plays and the way the plays are called, and like so you get your formation, and then is there motion? Is there a line call? Are they switching the play? Like it is a lot, and it only gets like more complex as you get
Absolutely.
higher up. So by the time you're in the NFL, it's like that play is like so long, and so
Yep.
for a quarterback to remember that, I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? And then each kind of position knows what they have to listen to. That's going to tell them what to do.
Mhm.
But like, you are learning a new language and you get fluent. And then this idea of fluency, do you think fluency and then, for some reason, intuition comes up for me, where the more fluent and the better you master or understand the basics, does your intuition improve?
No one's asked me that question, and what's funny is that in all the math tests and even the science tests that I took in high school, probably even in college, I did some self talk. before it,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
calm myself down. But some people will talk about math anxiety and stuff. I didn't have that. I actually told myself growing up to rely on my mathematical intuition, like before tests. Like I was confident in it. And what's funny is that I hadn't even thought about it in those terms, or I would have included in the book that I've just written about how my relationship with math from a very early age was built very, very solidly. And so, because I was successful over and over, that builds confidence. And when I'd get to a test, I would do some self talk and say, yes, rely on my mathematical intuition. And where did that come from? The fluency. And no
Yeah.
one's ever asked me that, but I don't know if you're reading my mind or whether we're on the same page with that. That was that's very insightful. And yes, uh, I think about my wife. She grew up speaking English and Spanish, and sometimes you ask well, what language do you think in, and this and that and the other, and you're talking about intuition, and you can't think mathematic, intuition or even musically like that unless the other stuff is automatic. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
I would say 100% the fluency will then go to intuition. And it really speaks to what uh, I guess I'm trying to preach in the book, Math in the Age of AI, is that to get to that higher level abstract thinking, this other stuff has to be automatic. So 100% agree.
Yeah. And let's and I guess let's talk about that a little bit. How is AI changing, what's with math and what's going on? Like what are you seeing how that's affecting?
I think a lot of people are attracted by shiny objects, first of all. Um, that marketing exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Shiny objects. And I lead with skepticism on everything. Optimistic skepticism, but I do lead with
Hmm.
skepticism. And I think that the tools have changed, and I think the tools are going to continue to change. And so I lean back to what we first spoke about on having fundamentals. And to me, the fundamentals are um, start with this fluency that I'm speaking of, but that then will beget the better thinking in some of the abstract mathematics. Once you get to geometry, trig, algebra two, you're thinking more and more abstractly. That's what's needed to guide whatever tool comes along. I've been using AI for development for a couple of years, but I will tell you it's not as smart as people might think, and especially it's not going to come up with what I've developed and the way I develop it something new and unique because it doesn't know new and unique. It knows what it's been fed, right? And so, how are we going to have people that guide it unless they can think abstractly with their own experiences and guide these tools or whatever tools are going to come in the future? So, I believe that to be a thinker, and it's built to, in my estimation or opinion, in math education, in some of the higher abstract thinking. But to get there, you can't get bogged down in the fluency. And so that's why I've tried to go down and third, fourth, fifth grader and help develop something that's fun and challenging and motivating so they can develop that so that when they get to high school and have the opportunity for the other math classes, they'll become better thinkers. That's what math is for. We're not going to be factoring quadratics our life for a living, but the abstract thinking is what goes with that. And so that's how I believe. I'm not going to, there's some new AI advancement every day. How are we going to be able to guide those things? Well, develop thinkers. How do you develop thinkers in that abstract math? They need to at least be fluent first so they can get to the good stuff
Yeah.
by that. That's how I think about those things.
Yeah. And what is currently going on when it comes to now I know each state is probably has different rules and different systems. But what is currently going on for when you think about those that younger age when they're starting to learn all of the basics of it? Like what's going on? Are they getting it right or like is there stuff that's being left out that you think?
That's probably a broader question right now that I can answer because there's probably as many different techniques as as you can imagine.
Hmm.
But what I hope is that people stick to pencil and paper
Okay.
for the development years. Uh, there are, uh,
What are the development years?
well, to me, up through fourth, fifth grade for sure, until they have a command of some of these things. Uh, what I learned by going back into the classroom a couple of years ago after 30 years in IT, and this blew my mind, is that you have to go to dyslexia training. You have to sit, for I can't remember how long or how many, a couple hours of it, uh, to understand how to identify or address it. And they were talking about things that are dyslexia therapy. And I was looking around thinking I was in the twilight zone. I am not joking because they were talking about things uh, with uh, phonetics, and they were talking about handwriting as therapies for dyslexia as if this was some new thing. And I mean, I can remember learning long A and short A and different things when I was growing up. I can still remember that in first, second grade, kindergarten about phonetics. We did handwriting, and now they're saying like it's some new thing. I'm like, why did we ever go away from that when it was working? Was it helping dyslexia um, sort of therapy all the time for those that were dyslexic? And as that went away, now we're seeing more of it. Yeah, probably. That's actually there's a lot of common sense on it. If we would have kept it, it would have been therapy for those that have dyslexia the whole time. But now we see this huge rise in dyslexia. My wife works in schools. I'm very uh, familiar with how that seems like there's more and more of it. Well, we got away from the things that were helping it all along. Um, that is interesting. In addition, there are countries, and I just saw a headline of this in the last week. I knew like either Sweden or Norway were going back to books versus iPads and Chromebooks. And now there are more and more countries, especially in that area of the world, that are saying we need more books and paper and pencil. When I was running for a school board in Dallas in 2024, 2023, 2024, I was doing plenty of research, and that uh, if you use a paper, a solid book versus a screen, your comprehension is increased 6 or 7 times.
Hmm.
That means we're handicapping our kids when we force them to use these tools, right? That's what that means. And I had a big problem with that. And so you want to avoid AI cheating, use a pencil and a paper. You want to
Sure.
improve whatever cognitive and mental things are going on with some potential dyslexic um, symptoms, handwriting. It's actually simple. It was working, and we got away from it for whatever um, whoever's agendas there were that had, and there's all kinds of agendas from profit agendas to folks justifying their the jobs and administrations at
Hmm.
all levels, but it wasn't broken. We handwriting was fine. Yes, it took a little longer to score and grade, but people were learning more, and the
Sure.
scores over time prove it.
Sure. Yeah. Like I'm not. I'm probably more closer. Like when I was growing up, it was still books hand. We didn't really have computers. That was kind of later on in high school. But like every kid didn't have a computer. You know what I mean? Um, you only got to use them in like some classes. So most of it was writing and physically reading a book and stuff. And then I also just hearing you talk there, and I almost feel like when I talk to like my parents too, they would remember so much more from when they were in their like elementary school, and they remember, oh, this teacher, we did these exercises and doing this and writing the cursive and like kind of just like you described. And it's like when I think about it, I don't remember anything. I don't remember any of the stuff that we did. Now, I don't know. Maybe that's just like that was a me thing, or was there like a way that maybe something changed about like the teachers and the way they taught for you to remember? Because like yeah, I guess the example like maybe I could use is like around here, you talked a lot of people my parents' age and older, they went to Catholic school, right? And I feel like they just remember everything that they did. And I don't know if they were just teaching it a different way or than like how it was. So I don't know if there's something to that too. Maybe you can speak a little bit based on your experience. Like that's interesting. It's interesting to me.
Well, for me, learning, first of all, learning was always fun.
Yeah.
Um, when I was the year that I was born was when Sesame Street came out, like 1969, and I was born to a single mom, and there was a time where maybe I was staying with my grandmother, and I would might watch Sesame Street. That was fun. When I was 4 or 5, Schoolhouse Rock came along, and so on Saturday mornings, we were a captive audience on those Saturday mornings. That if you wanted cartoons, that we looked at the TV guide and September issue to see what new cartoons and what the lineup was going to be. You know,
Mm-hmm.
plan my cereal around Super Friends or whatever was going to be
Sure.
on that
Sure.
morning. But Schoolhouse Rock had me knowing my multiples of 3 and 5 before I was in kindergarten. Learning was always fun. And when I got there, my mom tells me that the parent teacher conference, the teacher said I wanted to teach the class. So I might have a little bit different perspective, but I was always recording in my mind, for whatever reason, what caused the other students' light bulb to go off in their head. And I don't remember a
Mm-hmm.
time when it wasn't that. In second grade, I would finish my math early and I would go around helping the students, but I had one ear on the teacher and what she was saying that would help other light bulbs go off so that I might use that. So maybe I was just born to teach or with that particular passion because I remember that and I remember strategies and I've been sort of cataloging those ever
Mm.
since. And so I remember because I was intentionally trying to remember, and that's
Sure.
probably not common. So I can't knock you for that. I was the oddball in trying to remember everything. So
Yeah. So let's bring it back to the AI talk a little bit. Where do you think it stands like right now? I feel like right, you don't want AI cheating, um, but I could see how it could be like very helpful too at the same time. So for example, uh, I would say the way AI helps me now is it allows me to read things that there's no way I would understand because I can read it, then I can input it in and say, or I can take a picture of it, right, and ask it to explain it to me. And so I've done this. I do this all the time with certain books, like um, Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self Reliance. That's a pretty tough one for me to read, and so I'll read a couple chapters, and then stuff that I find interesting, I highlight, and then I sort of have a conversation with it, and then it explains it down to me in a way that I can really understand it, and then I take it and then I write those things down in my journal. Whereas if I didn't have that tool, I would read that and be like, I have no idea what the hell this means, and then I would be discouraged from reading that, right? Um, and I think that could be very beneficial to use for like some kids too, because think about if you're a kid and you're reading something in English or they're trying to explain a math concept to you and you're like, I don't know, I don't have anybody to ask. Like this is this is tough. You just get discouraged. You're like, why am I doing this? I don't understand. Like this is stupid. And then you're gonna stop doing it. At least that's a kind of maybe how I would have thought about it as a kid. And that is sort of how I approached things in school. But now I don't at all because I have a resource that I could ask a bunch of questions to.
I think what a time to be alive and to witness this particular technology. I I use it. I'm also a naturally curious person, and
Sure.
I find out what it can do. I've used it in developing some of the things that I've done here. I've used it in other software development things that um, make me produce more faster for companies. It's a tool. I'm wondering if uh, it's interesting when there are other developers that have no idea about it. But I think we need to figure out how to use it responsibly. Like you see that on beer advertisements on TV, drink responsibly. I
Drink
think we need to
responsibly.
figure
Yeah.
out responsible use of AI since it is such a powerful tool. Uh, if it's used as a, a crutch, that instead of thinking, we've got a problem. If it um, is used for quick understanding of something so you can get something else done. I've used it to fix cars. I've done all kinds of, wonderful things, taking a picture under the hood and it walked me through finding
Hmm.
amazing things. So I'm a proponent of using the tool, but not as a learning crutch along the way. Like, do this math problem for me, which it'll do. It'll compute anything you want. Yes,
Sure.
you can take a picture of an equation and it'll do it. That's not, of course, a responsible use. I've had a few thoughts as you were saying that, and I'm trying to put my thumb on a couple of more of those as we go. I think if we can develop thinkers that can use any tools, because I think that's what we should be doing in schools. How am I able to guide AI to new and unique solutions? Well, I know how to think. I know how to be skeptical of what it produces because I've used it for several software platforms and it never has it right. It's not that smart on new solutions because it doesn't know new solutions. And so I have to learn how to see it, analyze it, fix it, redirect it. But that right there is because I know how to think and I did my homework, on my own to get to that point. Now I can use any tool you put in front of me. And I believe I can develop any solution in any language because of the fundamentals that I developed on my own with my own brain. I
Yeah.
didn't take the shortcuts. And so, but I do
Well,
think people learn
you
how
know
to
what's
use it.
another interesting what's another interesting thought about that too though is that I I mean I'm 32, so I'm an adult and you're a little bit older than me, and we have like we're not kids anymore. And so we do have that experience. Like, what would that be like if we were, you know, 14, 15 using it with our perspectives versus what our perspectives and our advice is now where we are currently are.
I would give thought to not using it in all the core classes for a while, but I believe that people have to take a computer class nowadays. I think including that in that computer science class would be the smartest because it's contained. You can give it and talk about responsible use and how
Yeah.
it can help you. But the rest of the time, I think you need to be using your own brain and also then learning how to use the tool responsibly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a good solution to for it to be taught in a certain domain rather than like have free access to use it all the time. And your core classes, you know, keep it out of that.
Yeah, I thought about how smartphones made us less smart and social media made them less social. It's like this is, the tools uh, aren't great. How about we develop thinkers and then if they can think, they can use whatever tool in whatever form it is in the future, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting thought. I mean, especially for kids because the brain. I guess they're still developing, and there's so many. I think it's a delicate subject. I mean, I even think of just the whole social media thing and like the kids shows and like what are they being fed at like the one thing that stands out to me around all of that is I have a nephew, and he's going to be 4 in November, and like it's like all these kid shows are like super bright and like flash, and it's like whoa,
They're
like
quite
that.
manic, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that can't be that definitely can't be good for like a 4 year old. There's no way you can't convince you're watching. I'm getting anxious right now watching this kids
Yes.
show because it's like all
Nonstop
over the.
stimulation.
I mean, I'm like this there's no way that can be good for free brand. And I'm not like an expert on any of this stuff. That's just sort of me like giving a common sense take. Like there's no way it's so boom and the attention span and and all that is you watch and you're like what, it's crazy for somebody a kid like that young.
Yeah, and then their attention spans are shortened, and then when they go to school, um, how are the teachers supposed to manage that when it's not being managed at home? How and
Sure.
it is a real problem. Let me tell you.
And I think it ties back to exactly what you said because like let's think about it. To think, you need to sort of be still. You need some silence. You need some solitude. You need to be able to be patient and to really think. If you're disrupting that, like are we really thinking critically and thinking out of the box? Like I feel like a component to doing some really good thinking is like some stillness, like no distraction and just kind of like
That's
chill.
very insightful because if they're constantly being stimulated, when do they get to then exercise their own thoughts? That's very insightful.
You know, there's just so much distraction. There's so many things like I don't, I don't know. I guess I've thought about this. I think about this a lot. Um, I do think about this a lot because there is so much. There's like information overload for sure, and part of the AI thing, you know, could be that because we can get information on anything we want. So you could, look this thing up and then you could immediately ask it another question. And oh, now I got this thing. We're automatically forgot about that thing. We just asked the question about the other thing. So going back to like you said, it's like it's shiny object. It's like then it's the next thing where like hold on, let's peel it back instead of trying to read, instead of trying to read like 50 books, like let's maybe try to master one book first before just reading it and and quitting it. And I think I noticed it because probably about 4 months. No, I don't know how many months ago. 2 months ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I just was like, all right, I'm gonna get off Instagram, and I have noticed a huge difference. So like, I just have more. I don't know. Like I think more clearly,
Nice.
and that and like my thoughts are just not taken up by like other shit. I guess there's just more free thought. And I feel like I've thought been able to think better, kind of stripping it back and not focusing on too many things. And you know, thinking about I don't know. Let's go back. I really started to think about this when my wife and I were watching the show Outlander, right?
We've watched many, many seasons of it.
Okay, so we're watching that we're watching Outlander, and then by the time they go to like America in whatever season that is, and they get that land, like it's like okay, well and I was running a men's group during the time, and so like I was thinking a lot about like you know men's work, and it's like all right, well the modern man versus the man back then, it's like there's only like three things that he had to worry about. He woke up and he was like building his house. He was fighting a war to like stay alive, which is pretty stressful, but it's like high stress. It's like intensity, but not like that complex. The intensity's high, but there's not a whole lot. It's like you're just fighting a war. It's pretty straightforward of what it is. And then you looked for food. And that was kind of about it. There wasn't like a ton of other distractions. Like he wasn't going out like, oh, let me check my Instagram or let me check my email. And so, I've thought about that a lot, just like elimination of things and how you can just think better.
He should have protected Claire more from all those guys.
Yeah.
Look, you were talking a minute
This will end up being this will be end up being an Outlander podcast.
too much time spent on that.
Sure.
It's funny drama story and all that. But while you're talking a minute ago, I was thinking about the value of delayed gratification. There is value in that. Yes,
Hmm.
if you need to um, have a video summarized because you can do that, or a book summarized, you can do that. But there's nothing like reading a book to conclusion and experiencing that. Or in music, you're not going to be able to just put a piece of music down and be perfect every time you read it. There's delayed gratification. There's actually value in that journey as you develop those skills. And you're talking about the nephew and the shows he's watching, there's not much opportunity for delayed gratification. And then whenever you get to instances in school where it's required that it's not going to be instant, we have a problem because the kids just in general have not developed any patience for the delayed gratification where, you know, things aren't instant, but the things they're exposed to make it more so. And so we've got it compounds the problem that we're seeing in schools for sure.
Yeah. What do you think the solution to that is?
Other than less screens in their many forms, it's a good place to start. And it's also difficult. Um, Sometimes there are different pressures or different situations, but um, that's first and foremost. Let's just check that at the door. It's difficult, but how did we survive and thrive without it? Well, there's other games. There's playing. There's coloring books. There's dot to dot. Dot to dots were cool back in the day. You know, you might be able to see what that is. There are puzzles that delayed gratification. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things that you can do and should do. Play dominoes. You know, my mom played dominoes with me when I was 5, and I beat her the first game. I told you that Schoolhouse Rock, I knew my multiples of 5 before I was in kindergarten, and dominoes are fun. That is, I love playing Yahtzee. They still
Hmm.
have Yahtzee, and it's still a game where you roll dice. You got to count. You got to analyze what's going on, make
Hmm.
some judgment. Those are positive things, um, but it requires you to kind of be hands-on and be present with them, and that's part of being a parent. And so I
Yeah.
think it starts with less screens in all their forms and get back to giving them time to think, delayed gratification, things that help them think and feel safe with numbers, whether it's Yahtzee or dominoes. Those are all things that contributed to the my foundation of feeling safe in math and numbers.
And so right now, where are you right now? Are you still in schools teaching?
I taught 24, 25. So I've been out 1 year back in software development. And so I have a day job, and then all the rest of my time I'm spending with these classic math games and what times what, the multiplication bee, and things like that.
How much has school changed? Meaning like just take it back over the last just say like 10 to 15 years. How much has like school changed? Being in middle school or high school.
Well, I can speak specifically to the experience that I had.
Yeah.
And every student did have a Chromebook. It was a massive distraction. I might have a lesson for them that they were to do that involved some sort of, software that they did. But if you walked around back, or if you looked at the tool that lets you see what they're working on, they might be watching YouTube basketball or soccer or something like that, and totally not. Or when some sites might be blocked, they have this massive shared Google Drive where you could watch Spider-Man 3 or whatever movie you want to watch. because Google Drive can't be blocked because that's necessary for schooling. They will, well, chats aren't possible because of chats. They'll use a document on a Google Drive as a chat because
Oh yeah,
when you
yeah,
do
yeah,
that,
yeah,
it
yeah,
updates. And so they'll just open some
yeah.
Google Doc and chat in it.
Oh
I can pull
man.
up what's going on, and uh, of course, no names, but I'm looking because I'm trying to be responsible. And you can look at this drama between a girl and her boyfriend, and you're thinking he's toxic, get
Oh,
away, like that. But you're like, it's also none of my business. You're like, they're using these are the tools they're using to bypass the rules. There's always something,
sure.
and like, why? That's not an educational purpose. In fact, I don't. That's probably the number one change. By the way, this was a school that banned phones. They had the pouches that were locked up, and there'd still be some phones that escaped now and then into sight. And very supportive administration on handling that situation and all. But the Chromebooks were just as bad as the phones, or worse. It's just a bigger screen for them to do still whatever they wanted to do on it.
Yeah.
And so that's number one. Number two is that uh, a unique experience for me as far as how things have changed. I was drum major in high school, and it was always important. In the summer when we went to drum major camp, you had to learn all 30 names of the drum majors in your little circle, or people have to run or something like that. There was some sort of negative consequence. The idea was you need to know everyone's name. Everyone's name is important when you're in band. Learn people's names, and maybe even talk about the how that is someone will feel like a sense of belonging, so that might be able to learn and contribute. Um, but I had in I had six classes, 120 students or so. I would have young ladies walk into my classroom, and they were from other parts of the world, including the Middle East, including some Muslim nations, or that were under the Taliban control, and they still wore a hijab, and I could only see their eyes. And if three or four of them walk in, and as a responsible teacher, I'm trying to learn their name, and all I see is four sets of eyes, that's different. You want to talk about how class was different? I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is challenging. And by the way, I think to my core, yes, learning someone's name and calling that is fundamental to them feeling safe in a learning environment and stuff. And so a seating chart was very helpful with that. So I could say,
Yeah.
okay, you know, sometimes it was height and, build and different things like that. But I started, knowing their names. And I don't know that they were getting that in every class, but they would come to my class early, or when they'd have an opportunity, they would come into my class, I think because I was making the effort to meet them where they were, like teachers should do. And they couldn't do math, the math that I was teaching. I tried to give them other opportunities. Here, make a poster of solving this equation, and I would write it out so they could write it out. But I would let them hang these in the hall for extra credit. By the way, made the hall nice and decorative because you're seeing all these different equations and stuff in the hall. But they might not be able to do what was on the lesson. Like I said, they had Taliban. They didn't have a foundation, but when they walked down the hall between classes, I did see them nudging their friend and pointing out that was theirs, and they were proud of that. Hey, look, I did that, and I did my best to meet them where they were, and it was a very low level, and try to give them something to be successful at, so that they might start developing a positive relationship with math. Um, so that was unexpected to run into that type of situation in the classroom, and I tried to handle it the best that I could. The other half of the class were from that district, grew up in that district, and they were in remedial algebra because didn't have success in it before. That's how you get to remedial algebra. And they had a learned helplessness. They realized that no matter how hard they try, they weren't going to be successful, or that's how they thought, and they wouldn't try. From the front of the class, you can't tell the root cause, but over the course of the year, I realized, they didn't learn their times tables under the Taliban, and these folks missed it somehow, or it wasn't prioritized, or they didn't get fluency. Neither of them can factor. And between the Chromebooks and all these things going on, that those were some differences that I experienced, that I observed in the classroom.
Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today that we should have talked about or that you want to speak on?
Well, the root cause that I found in them not being able to do certain tasks was because of their lack of multiplication fluency. And so
Mm,
that's why I've made it my mission since then to help develop tools that, by the way, are accessible to them. They don't, it's not in the app store, it's just in the regular browser. Go to whattimeswhat.com. Because I'm thinking about all those different types of students I just described, and not all of them will have, you know, a computer with an app store or a phone with an app store. In fact, you can play as a guest and do all the learning and all the playing without even having an email. And in one click in the settings, the voice recognition or speech recognition for these switches to Spanish. I truly, an educator at heart, I'm trying to educate these kids. If I wanted to just see this as a profitable venture, I would do like I've done with the other software platforms I've done. It's a software as a service, monthly, annual pay, or whatever. But I don't think that I'm not built like that in my principle. In my principles, I'm trying to help people, and I do that. I made the decision to try to monetize it through sales of the book. And I appreciate you mentioning that. I made a
yeah.
little vanity URL. Math in the Age of AI will get you to the Amazon link to that. And so I'm trying to monetize it in other ways and keep it free for students and teachers uh, all over the world. What's funny is I see, because I'm IT and I'm operational, I'm monitoring, there's folks in Australia, folks in the Virgin Islands, folks in the UK and Norway, there's folks in Africa. And so there is as I'm getting the word out, adoption around the world where it might not be accessible, but since it's just in a browser, it is. So I do hope if anyone believes in the cause that they contribute to the charity, the Classical Education Foundation that I've got in there, or buy the book because I'm trying to monetize in alternative formats to keep things like this free because I think that is key. The more kids that are fluent in math, they're going to be better thinkers and be able to handle AI instead of be um, controlled by it. So
Yeah.
that's how that's sort of my mission. And what's funny is it's sort of come full circle. I started off with math education, getting a bachelor's and master's in math education. I took a detour through music education and software development, found my way back, and it is to my core something that I could see doing until my last breath into helping this type of thing. There've been a ton of interest in the multiplication bee, which multiplicationbee.com is something, but it uses the what times what. I built that in. Anybody for free can host a multiplication bee like a spelling bee. The technology exists now. You can't do it with flashcards. It's just too complicated. But now it's efficient with the speech recognition. One person can set it up, and there are schools that have committed to doing that. But those are the other things that I would want to be sure that we mention before we leave. That
Yeah.
those things are possible now, and it's fun. And that was the goal: make it more fun than spelling bees, and so that kids will uh, understand the importance of and hopefully have fun being fluent in math so that when they get to higher math, they can get to the good part and start being more abstract thinkers because we're going to need them.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the key word there a couple times is fun.
Mhm.
Well, Chris, thank you. Thank you for doing what you do in helping math fluency. I think it's really important in kind of the world that we live in today. Where can people go to stay up with what you're doing? Make sure to link all of your stuff in the show notes as well.
Well, the charity classical-education.org has everything, but multiplication B, B-E-E, is another place. Whattimeswhat.com is where the multiplication fluency is. There's a daily puzzle that's the same for everybody all over the world, like Wordle. And that's one of those shareable things that even as an adult, it might be good to keep your mind sharp. on how your multiplication affects. How many can you do in 30 seconds? The speech recognition. I mean, 30 seconds a day is not a big chunk of time each morning.
Sure.
I think I've got a 90 something day streak now, going back
There
to
you go.
May. And it is still fun for me. Some mornings I'm a little foggier than other mornings, but it is fun. And I encourage folks to give it a shot. And if you have a nephew or a niece or child, challenge them head to head. There's a way to do that in there where you can go challenge, because that's kind of like basketball in the driveway where you're challenging
Yeah.
the younger men. At some point, they keep working and pass you. That's a healthy competition that I encourage you. You know, if you have a young person, see who does best, and hopefully that'll motivate them to try to beat you, or you to beat them if they're are better at it. So it's a fun, healthy competition that I hope people will gravitate towards. And I appreciate you having me on and help me evangelize this.
Of course, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks.